powered by Riverside FM.
Welcome to Do Good Work Podcast, hosted by Terrell Strayhorn and Jaquan Johnson. We specialize in taking a deep dive into issues that truly matter. Each episode unpacks the challenges and opportunities facing today's leaders, from classrooms to boardrooms, offering insights that inspire real change. By redefining success, we're changing lives, empowering people everywhere to create environments where everyone feels a sense of belonging, whether at home, work, or school. So hey, sit back, relax, grab your favorite beverage, and join us as we explore the issues shaping our futures, one meaningful conversation at a time. Let's go!
Hello to every single one of you out there in broadcast land, and welcome back for an exciting episode of Do Good Work Podcast. I'm your host, Terrell Strayhorn, and coming to you live from the studios tonight. It's been, a week or so before we've had a show. So last week we did not have a show. Mostly because it was my birthday. And so we took a break and allowed some time to celebrate and enjoy, our time together. So shout out to all of the Tauruses. It's Taurus season. So if you got a birthday coming up, please feel free to drop it in the chat on any of our platforms. We are on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and of course Spotify. So there's a lot happening in the world, so much to discuss and talk about, but I want to be sure that we take time to do the things that we normally would do on the show. Again, if you have not already, please join us in liking and sharing and broadcasting the show out. You can take the link from YouTube or any of the other platforms. I typically take the one from YouTube and share it across various platforms. So if you haven't yet, please join us in sharing it out. Tag a friend, tell a neighbor, help us let folks know it is showtime. It's time to be together to talk about some of the important issues that matter in our world. And we've got a lot we've got to really tackle and cover in tonight's show. And so I'm trying to make sure that I've done the same. And it's never really fully easy to do this. Here we go. All right. As you can see, I am trying to do this somewhat solo. So give me a second to make sure I don't post it on the wrong account. What is going on? I don't even know what that means. But yeah, there it is. So feel free to share it out. Let people know that we are live and in the studio. And if they say, well, I didn't see a show last week, it's just because we took a little break. And so certainly want to thank you for tuning in. Feel free, drop your comment in the chat. Let us know who's tuning in, where you're tuning in from. And we will most certainly, there we go. All right. So we had no show, like I said, last week, and then we're back. Lots going on in the world that we're going to talk about. Also, special shout out to the class of 2025. So many places having commencements. We certainly had a great time at Virginia Union University, where I work. And so we graduated the largest class in our institution's history. Shout out to the class of 2025, all of those, again, who are completing an undergraduate degree, completing a master's degree, completing a doctoral degree, or completing a certificate, anything that's happening. Shout out to the class of 2025. Just know that we are so proud of you, and it's not over. Commencement is not the end. It is the beginning, the beginning of a really exciting journey. And so we want to shout out to all of you. If you are in the class of 2025 and tuning in to the show, drop it in the chat. If you know someone who's graduated, drop it in the chat, tag them. And then certainly if you are a member of the class of 2025 and you want to tell us your testimony, your good story, what you're doing, where you're going next, feel free. Use the chat and drop it there. If we see it, if I see it, I'll pull it into the show for you. It seems to me that it is easier to see the chat if you type on Facebook and I think YouTube. But if you're on any other platform, we'll make sure we go take a look and see it. And certainly we'll celebrate you and shout you out. I love doing that and want to talk about some of that tonight. So it is May 10th. Can you believe it? May is already here. And I was telling someone the other day, I said, I still remember I still remember January. I still remember, Black History Month, of course, February. I remember some things that I was doing in March and some pretty important projects in March. And here it is already May. Time is flying. It is waiting on no one. So if you are thinking about doing something, looking to do something, whatever it might be, do not wait. Time is not waiting for any of us. It is of the essence. And so now is the time you want to do those things that you probably are putting off for even tomorrow. Get it done now. So it's May season. Want to talk about that. Hopefully you had an opportunity to check out the show, 2 weeks ago now, where we had Senator Charlene Oliver out of Nashville, District 19 with us. And she shared so much good information. And the full interview you can catch on our YouTube channel as well as the Spotify channel. I'm excited because in the month of May, there are other guests that I want to bring to the show. And some of them we've already confirmed. Some of them, we're wrapping up those final details and trying to lock in some people who have pretty busy schedules. So, it's hard when you are trying to coordinate schedules with folks who are not sitting around on their hands. But we're going to bring those to you in the upcoming episodes. I absolutely assure you you have nothing to worry about. So let's do this. As I was really looking at today's show and thinking about the things that I know we want to talk about, we often, at least take a moment to talk about some of the things that, are happening in the world. We've got a new Pope. Pope Leo, and the first American Pope who is now over the Catholic Church. It was very interesting to see what he continues to bring to that role and that leadership and how it's, different because of his background, his nationality. But we certainly celebrate leadership and understand that so much of what we are doing in the world depends on really good, strong leaders. And so, we need more, not less. And so we want to certainly celebrate his leadership and wish him all the best. Now, we've got also more, sort of executive orders and other kinds of decisions that are affecting a lot of important areas of social life, especially in education. So I think we've certainly talked on this show about any efforts and policies that are designed to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education. But just so you're aware, there are also, the most recent budget proposal would include or involve the removal and ending of federal TRIO programs. And federal TRIO programs were established by law, and resources were directed toward creating programs that help low income, no income, first generation um, you know, students to gain access to education and certainly to higher education. It's not just gaining access, it's also about success. So these programs are designed to provide support, advising and coaching and mentoring and uh, writing assistance and the kind of academic and social support that students need to be successful. Everybody needs support. Everybody needs a help. But this was designed to really provide support to those who, frankly, start off with the least. And for years, many years, decades now, we've had these federal dollars that were earmarked toward that support. And the most recent proposal from the federal government would include or require the removal of those dollars or the redistribution of those dollars, and those programs would no longer end. It's important to me partly because I've worked in TRIO programs. I remember as a graduate student at Virginia Tech, my graduate assistantship was in the McNair program, McNair being one of kind of like a federal TRIO program. It's not always included along with Upward Bound and those programs, but it is in that suite. But apart from working in McNair, by the way, McNair, Ronald E. McNair program is really designed to increase the number of underrepresented students who go on to get graduate degrees, primarily those who go on to get research doctorates, PhDs. But many students who are in the McNair program might aspire to other forms of doctoral degrees, MDs and JDs and vet med and the like. But it is to increase the number of doctoral degrees earned by underrepresented students and largely students of color. And it has worked. I mean, we've had more. And so what you do, and what I did as a graduate assistant was, I would host workshops and programs to help students gain access to the kinds of experiences that we know you need in order to get a doctoral degree. You are going to be better, more competitive for a doctoral program if you understand the research process. So we would take undergrads, get them paired up with faculty to learn about research and inquiry, scientific process. And quite often they would be working with faculty on research projects. Even as undergrads, you are going to be more competitive for graduate school, for a doctoral program, if upon graduating from your undergraduate program, you have not only research experience, but oh my goodness, if you have a publication or a presentation or, some documented sort of training around research, it just puts you head above others, right? And so many McNair programs are funded and designed to do that, to give those kinds of experiences to undergraduates and many undergraduates who would not have those experiences otherwise. So, any removal of those funds is, to remove that kind of support. And I just don't know why we would, but that is certainly what's happening. Second is within that whole TRIO suite of programs, you also have programs like Upward Bound. You've got some TRIO programs that are pre-college, right? So they reach out to students while they're in high school, sometimes even middle school, and get them interested in college, aspiring to college, campus tours, workshops, and the like. So they're keenly aware of college opportunities, and it's designed to be an on-ramp into college. And again, it gives them a leg up to be competitive. It takes a student who's doing well in school, but no one's ever talked to them about college, and has a college professionals, quite often counselors or advisors, who will talk to them about it, talk to them and demystify the college application process and what financial aid is. Many of these TRIO programs don't only work with students, they'll work with students and their families on financial literacy. And many students who aspire to go to college who are low income, no income, first generation, students of color, and certainly those who live at the intersections of all of those identities, might want to go to college, but always overestimate the cost of college and underestimate the amount of aid that is available for those who want to go to college, right? This is just a common challenge we've known in this country, is that many students would go to college if they could afford it, but they overestimate how much college costs. And I've seen this. I've done surveys of college students, high school students, and asked them, how much does college cost? And on a survey, sometimes juniors and seniors would say things like, $100,000, $60,000, $40,000. Now, there are some colleges that do cost $40,000 and $50,000 per year. But there aren't too many known colleges that cost $100,000 a year. So that's overestimating the cost of college. If you ask them, how much is college in, say, 4 years cost? You get answers, I've seen answers as high as $1 million. But again, how would you know how much something costs if you've never been there? How would you know how much something costs if no one's ever talked to you about it? So it takes these kinds of training and conversations and honest discussions. I think it's truly important to think about this because college is important. We live in a world where having access to education makes a difference in terms of your options. Two, that the cost of college, while remarkably high in some cases, there are many, many colleges that are relatively affordable, right? No, I've had lots of surveys where no student imagines that college might cost, $8,000 a year, $5,000 a year. So you got the cost of college that they're overestimating. And the problem with that is if I think I can't afford it, I don't even try to go. I'm not motivated to apply because I can't imagine where that money is going to come from. The second challenge that TRIO also helps address is students and families underestimate the amount of aid that is available. I have talked to financial aid experts and counselors who, will say things like, at my campus, we discount almost every dollar for most families that apply, depending on who you are. Sometimes if you're an international student or if you are a first generation student. And so how do you help students and families know how much college costs, but also be informed about the amount of aid that's available? You got to have workshops. You got to have information channels. You got to have one of our guests or someone in our listening audience, Jacob, you're right, talks about, I'm going to share these on the screen because they're really important comments. And by the way, if you're listening in, please feel free to share. He says, so much to go off of here. I think it's important to highlight how it connects students to high impact practices. That's true. For TRIO, let's talk about that. The other piece that you share that I want to put on the screen is, we have a college cost calculator. And folks have no idea the amount of fees that are actually wrapped up in overall tuition. And so quite often, these college cost calculators can help students and their families really, not only understand that college it costs. Yes, it does cost to go, but there's aid available. And aid is not only loans, and it's not only Pell Grant, although these are important pools of money to help people achieve their dreams. And that's another one, Pell. That's currently being examined and quite frankly being reduced. But you need workshops, you need information channels, you need training. Sometimes this stuff is so complicated. If you've ever had to fill out a FAFSA or any sort of financial aid form, you can, you almost, before they started to simplify it a bit, you needed almost a doctorate to get through the form. And you had to understand a lot of different terms, a lot of different words, a lot of different aspects of higher education. If you've never been, it's almost difficult, if not impossible, to help a student get there. So TRIO provides funds to connect students and their families to experts who would run these workshops and provide this information. Back to something that Jacob said, What we know from the research is this, that, and I say this a lot because I think it's just a way to level set some of the conversation. Everyone needs help. No, what's that phrase? If you ever see a turtle up on a ledge, just know that he or she did not get there by themselves. Someone has to help the turtle get up there. And that's a good metaphor for higher education. I don't care, what school you went to, where you grew up, how much money you have, what your grades were coming out of high school. No one gets through higher education without some support. Now, the difference is, so everybody needs support, everybody needs help, everybody needs assistance. The difference is we are different in, one, the type of help and assistance that we need. Some students need financial assistance. Some students need academic assistance. Some students need social assistance and psychological assistance, and sometimes even medical assistance, right? They're all types of assistance that we provide. So the type differentiates some. The second is the amount of aid and assistance that we need. Some people need a lot of support, a lot of aid. Some people are doing fairly well, and they just need a little bump, a little assistance. I was once working with, or had a project where I was studying students in science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM fields. And, in that project, we discovered that one of the reasons why a lot of just happened to be on this campus, women and people of color, and as you do a deeper dive, you'd find that some of them are low income, some of them are first generation, first in their family to go to college and so forth, right? As you do a deeper dive into that demographic, you would learn all sorts of nuances. But generally speaking, women and people of color did not fare well in that undergraduate engineering program. Many of them either they transferred out to another major, or they fell on academic probation and were dismissed from the program. And the sort of barrier courses, gateway courses, barrier courses for them were these advanced level math and sometimes advanced level science courses. But it was a lot of advanced level math. And so this particular campus brought me and my team in to help them assess the situation and then come up with a solution. So we ultimately imagined this sort of academic intervention, academic program that students who kind of fit this description could choose, agree, elect to be a part of. And what they would do, apart from going through their undergraduate experience as an engineering major, was, let's just call them the STEM scholars, right? They would be a part of the STEM scholars program, and they would get extra tutoring in math, additional supplemental instruction in math, math enrichment kinds of training and opportunities. There were social experiences to get them bonded together, because the other thing that we found is that it can be isolating in STEM fields to be a woman and a person of color, and certainly a woman of color. And so we had these social experiences, these outings that they would go on as a group to build their social bonds. And then also, back to what I said earlier, if you're really going to do well in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, you got to be interested in inquiry. You got to be interested in research. And so we had them sort of embedded in this undergraduate research experience. All right. So we packaged all that together, gave it a label and name, gave it a personality. That is, they got little swag bags and little caps and stuff that they could wear. And then the other part that me and my team did was we then measured, as the school implemented the program we designed, we started assessing. So do they start doing better in their math classes? Do they start doing better in terms of their overall grades? Are they more likely to be retained in the major? And the answer was yes, right? Now, so backing up, what we learn from that experience is everyone needs support. We differ in the type of support that we need. We also might differ in the quantity of support. Some of the students used a lot of supplemental instruction in math. Some of them used a lot of extra math enrichment. Some of them did not. They didn't need a whole lot more, but they needed some in order to rise to the rigor of college level math at those advanced levels. We just know a lot about student success, what it takes for students to be successful, and the fact that what it takes for student A is not what it takes for student B, right? Here's the other thing we know from research, and that is that there are just certain experiences that are quite effective in boosting students' success. We call them, and Jacob put it in the chat, high impact practices. What some people, the acronym is HIPS. And so high impact practices sort of run the gamut. I mean, they're, depending on who you're asking, they're different kinds of things. But let me just talk about a few of them because it gets to the importance of TRIO, gets us back to that TRIO conversation, which is really about, there are lots of TRIO directors. I've been trying to get one or two to come onto the show to talk about what they do. They just do good work, It's the kind of work that makes a difference for students and student success, which is typically how we measure or operationalize doing good work. Anything that's on behalf of other people to help other people thrive and succeed becomes, good work. Well, some high impact practices are things like undergraduate research. We know that when you engage with a faculty member in research, you're not just learning about the scientific process, although that is true. You're not just learning about principles of inquiry, or in some humanities fields about the creative arts and performances. You are learning about knowledge. You're learning how to fact check. You're learning how to evaluate the credibility of sources. You're learning how to frame a problem and how to, explore a problem. And it's not just in a lab, although clearly that's the site at first, but what you learn in the lab can be translated into life. That's kind of catchy. What you learn in the lab can be translated to life, right? That if I can learn how to ask important, what we call research questions, and then to design a study that will yield information, knowledge to help me answer that question. And then I know how to go out and conduct the study, report my findings to an audience, whether it's my master's or doctoral dissertation committee or the American public. And I know how to write it up to communicate what I did, what I found, and why it matters. Those are highly transferable skills that will set you up for success regardless of your industry, right? Because you'll be able to go into the workplace and be able to identify and assess problems, ask important questions. Not just ask questions, but work with your team and your supervisor, even your CEO, on designing, plans and projects for exploring those issues. And then being able to imagine through the use of data, making data-informed decisions to come up with solutions that will likely address those problems. That's what makes undergraduate research such a high-impact practice. But there are others. We often identify as a high-impact practice mentoring. Anything that will bring students together with near peers, that is, peers of theirs who, so when you pair a first-year student with a junior or a senior, so they can learn from each other. They can build community. They're just lessons that the junior or the senior has already experienced or likely has already experienced that will be of benefit to the first year student, some call freshman, the entering student. And, the science is very clear that people can learn sometimes more and better from a near peer than they can from someone who's quite a distance away from them. And especially with the way that the world is changing, having people mentored by near peers can be effective because, sometimes by the time you pair them with someone who's way, way, way senior than them in age, college life has changed. The major has changed. The industry, the field has changed. And so It can be a different kind of experience. Doesn't mean there's no value to it. It's just you might then have them with a near peer as well as a more experienced peer. So mentoring becomes a high impact practice. And then lastly, I'll say, we have pretty clear evidence that, writing intensive courses and experiences are high impact practices. They boost, they produce lots of gains for students, and advising, especially kind of intrusive advising or proactive advising, another kind of high impact practice. So the question becomes, okay, right? So if we know that when students experience proactive, intrusive advising, where an advisor doesn't wait for the student to come to them, but we set up a ecology, a system where we can anticipate the kind of challenges that students will have, that we'll know, like that program we built at that institution, that these incoming engineering students are likely to face trouble in those upper level math courses. That's not, having low expectations of them. That's just simply looking at the data over a period of time and saying, lots of students struggle in this class. So why wait for them to struggle or fail before you provide support? No, you use that data to then build the intervention, to equip the advisor with information about how to help the student. And then before they fall behind or, quite frankly, start to fail, you reach out to provide that kind of support. And when you ask, like, how do colleges and universities do this? How do they provide writing support? How do they provide intrusive wraparound kinds of advising and other aids? How do they make sure that students are engaged in undergraduate research? And how are they assuring that students, especially those who need it, get mentoring? Quite often, it's through these supplemental funds, or it's through federal TRIO programs. It's through Title III dollars. And so if you start to hear, as you are, that these kinds of federal investments are under attack or being removed, please remember the things we're talking about, that it's not just dollars that are being shifted. It's not just a budget line that's being erased. It's the support that is attached to that budget line that enables the success of so many thousands and thousands of students, especially students who, quite frankly, aren't set up to succeed without that support. And it's not that the student cannot do it, right? That's not always the case. It's because higher education is not set up for them to succeed. That's the part that is the structural kinds of barriers to their success. We just happen to know, like, I have been in higher education my entire career, and the things that I noticed that, especially as I study more students, right? Students who are living with disabilities, students in all forms of disabilities, students who are low income, no income, students who are first generation, first in their family or first in their zip code to go to college, face challenges in higher education, not because they're academically inferior, not because they're not brilliant and capable, but quite often because higher education is set up to disadvantage them. I'll give you an example. I'll give you 1,000 examples, actually, if you want them. But I know one kind of example of this that often comes the case is, I've worked at different kinds of institutions, and I've worked in administration at several institutions. And, we expect students to come into college, and within the first year, which is in a higher education context, it's not a calendar year. It's an academic year. Most academic years are 9 months. And even that, it's like you come in August, and then you're done usually by November, and then you have a winter break. You come back in January, you're done by May. And what most colleges and universities expect of their incoming first year students to do is somewhere in that first semester, if not by that second semester, they expect a student to declare a major. You are advantaged in higher education if you come into college already kind of knowing what you want to be, already knowing what you want to major in. I'm going to tell you because it's important. When I went to college, I went to University of Virginia undergrad. All my life growing up, I wanted to be a lawyer. So I said, I'm going to be a lawyer. And then there was a period of time where I wanted to be a medical doctor. And my uncle, the late Earl Strayhorn, I often, my mom, dad, grandma helped me, and people at my church who had doctorates helped us understand the importance of um, role modeling and observing people doing the kind of job that I wanted. So I was fortunate. Even in high school, I shadowed an attorney, um, and just went with them into court. And I thought it was so cool. And I thought, you know what, I could do this. I want to do this. At some point, I was able to shadow a doctor, and I think even my uncle. And I thought, man, this is cool too. I didn't like the sight of blood. I fainted at the sight of blood, and that was probably a clue that that was not going to work very well for me. But I was able to shadow people who were doing the kinds of jobs I wanted. Why am I telling you this? When I went to the University of Virginia, the first thing I wanted to do was I said, you know what? I thought I will major in science. So when I first got there, I wanted to do biology. There was a point in time where I was a math major, and I did that for several semesters. And then I said, no, I got to be pre-law. So I thought I should do political science. And I ultimately settled on music and religious studies as a double major. And I did kind of like sociology, criminology as a minor. Right. So what I'm saying is, although I was academically oriented, although I think I was college ready, generally, I thought I was very academic and worked hard. I changed my major at least 3 or 4 times. And I still finished in 4 years. I don't know how, but I finished in 4 years because I had good advisors. I had good coaches who were helping me on campus navigate this space. So I think it's kind of challenging, almost sometimes unrealistic for us to believe that every first year student can come into college and within those first, 6 weeks to 8 weeks, know exactly what they want to do and declare a major. Again, you are advantaged if you come in already knowing these things or already pretty clear. If you've had the resources, social capital, the networks, you've had the experiences to shadow some people in certain fields, and you know that you really want to do this. A lot of college students in that first year, they're afraid to declare a major because they feel like it's a kind of like a life sentence. Once I declare it, oh my gosh, what if I don't want to stick with it? And it's just not true. So we've built first year seminars to really help students start to think about being in college, think about their major, think about what they will do, and gaining exposure to it. The other thing we do, so if you get into college and you kind of already know where you're going and you have a clear plan and you don't plan on changing it, your advantage. If you get into college and you're not sure, if you get into college and you're the first in your family to ever go and no one's ever talked to you about careers and the kinds of careers that are available, and there's so many careers available, it's easy to feel pressured to make these decisions too early. And if you don't make them in time, it's easy to feel like you're sort of behind. Again, that feeling of feeling behind becomes almost like a burden to you that separates you from your peers. And so we do need supports through TRIO programs and others that help students, first year seminars, summer bridge programs that really help students make these decisions. That's really important. I think the other part of this is, not just about the number of times that students might get into college and change their major, but we have a lot of students who come to college and, if you've never been before and no one in your family's ever been, college can be a very intimidating and frightening place. It's you come in, you're around all these people you don't know. It's the longest goal that most students have ever had to pursue by the time they enter in college. I'm talking mostly traditionally aged, but 25 and under. You've never had to pursue a goal for 4 years or 5 years. Usually you go to 6th grade and in a year you're going to be promoted to 7th grade, and 7th grade goes to 8th grade, and 9th grade, you might want to learn the piano, and after several lessons you see some progress. Before you know it, you're playing the piano. But to pursue something for 4 years, 5 years on average, and it's not like you get any sort of incremental or sort of midpoint reward. The associate's degree is not a midpoint reward because it's not given out at every school. So you're pursuing this dream of a bachelor's for 4 or 5 years without any sort of tangible intermediate reward. Now, the way that most institutions respond to that is you have institutions now starting to create more tangible intermediate rewards for students. Sometimes we call them certificates. Sometimes we call them badges. Sometimes we just give them assessments of their progress, and we celebrate the achievement of 15 credits. We celebrate the 15 to get the second set of 15, the 30. We mark the moment where a student hits, on most college campuses, 60 becomes important because it's like the midpoint, because the undergraduate degree on average is 120 credits, half of that being 60. So when you hit the 60 mark, it's almost, I've seen campuses that will sort of draw out a 4-year map, and they'll shade in the amount of progress the student has made. And that's a visual marker for the student. Yes, they have the transcript. For a lot of students, they need to see it visually, which is great because it gets back to another comment from the chat. Sometimes you can't. It's hard to believe it if you can't see it, right? And so, these are things that campuses do. Again, you ask yourself, well, how in the world are they doing all this stuff? How are they creating images of their degree maps? And how are they, sharing this information with students? How are they using micro messages? Those are text messages quite often that go to the student's phone. And before you know, the student says, oh my goodness, I just completed 30 credits. Hang in there. Keep going. You're doing great, whatever. A lot of it's powered through these federal dollars, these federal programs that provide resources on top of basic operations that keep the lights on and the buildings clean and pay the faculty and staff. They're powered through these federal dollars, these federal grants that quite honestly are being dried up and removed at this point in time. Let me say this because I just said it. It's hard to become something that you've never seen. Years ago, I used to say it's impossible to become something that you've never seen. Until one day when I was brushing my teeth, looking in the mirror, I realized I am something I've never seen. I have not had, at any point in time during my training, a Black male professor. By the time I get to my doctoral program, I did have a single course with someone who I think was a kind of like an instructor or part-time adjunct, but full-time tenured professor who's Black and male. I don't even think I've had a Black woman as a professor. And so it sensitized me to the fact that I'm spewing out something that's not true. It's not impossible to become something you've never seen. It may be difficult, and it is. It may be challenging, and it was. But it is not impossible. It's just hard to become something you've never seen. So one of the things that I think is very true, and it shows up in my research on belonging, it shows up in my research on student success, is students feel a sense of belonging when they feel like they matter. And they feel like they matter when they feel important, when they feel celebrated and seen, when they feel like other people need them, what we call dependence in the literature. The other thing is students feel a sense of belonging when they see themselves reflected in the campus environment, in the classroom, in the high school, I'm writing a book on workplace belonging. And what I'm learning there is that people feel a sense of belonging at work when they see themselves reflected in the work environment, right? So you should ask yourself, how does reflected in the work environment mean? Is it like pictures on the wall? Sometimes, yeah. I mean, if you've ever been to a KIPP Academy, KIPP, knowledge is power. It stands for some knowledge is power plus, or but KIPP is a very kind of well-regarded network of schools and academies. And in many KIPP academies, when you walk down the hall, it's based on positive psychology. You see signs on the wall that say, you've got this, you can do it, it's not over till you win, all these very powerful messages. And it's based on a science that we know when people read messages like that, especially when they kind of pause for a moment to read it and reflect about it. Reflection doesn't have to take 20 hours. Even reflecting for a moment on it, there is detectable boosts to one's confidence, one's belief, one's motivation. It can turn, someone who's feeling pretty deflated and defeated into someone who believes in the possibility of success. That it can turn someone who's feeling like a failure or feeling like they've just suffered a loss into one who believes that they can turn it around. It can turn around. So these positive messages really do matter. And, quite frankly, KIPP academies are sort of founded on that. But what I've learned is that in my belonging research, when people read messages like "you belong here," "you matter," "you're enough," whether it's on a t-shirt, on a hoodie, a sign on the wall. I have in my book on belonging from 2019, I talk about a faculty member who's actually in engineering of all places. She goes into the classroom, she writes on the wall, "You belong here." I'm sorry, not the wall, on the chalkboard, "You belong here." And then she sits in the chair and she watches her students come into the classroom. And, women, people of color coming into an engineering classroom, and they're, people are taking pictures of the chalkboard, and, they're looking like, what is happening here? Why is this on the board? And she tells me the story of that day. I think she's a couple weeks into the class, and she realized she had never paused to offer this message to them. So after hearing me talk about belonging, she goes back into her classroom. She tries this out on the board. She gets up in front of them. She says, "Listen, I know we're in week 4, week 5, and I've told you a lot of things about engineering." She's teaching a environmental engineering class. She says, "I've talked to you about a lot of things regarding environmental engineering. I've told you this. I've told you this. I've told you this theory. I've told you this equation." She said, "But I've missed the most important message, and that's the one that's on the board. And that is, if you are in this classroom and you are second guessing yourself, you took the first quiz and didn't do well, and you're doubting your beliefs, and you're probably telling yourself, I'm out of place. I came to tell you, you belong here. You do have what it takes." That, struggling on a quiz doesn't mean that you won't pass the test. Not passing the test doesn't mean you don't fit in the profession. And then she tells her own story, the hills and the mountains. And she writes to me about how that particular day, students shed tears, there was laughter, there were hugs in the engineering classroom. And you ask yourself, how in the world can you do all that in the engineering classroom? That's what happens when you bring these principles that are very humanizing into any space, whether it's statistics and math, whether it's engineering or music, whether it's history or harmonics. The message is going to be that we're all humans, and every human wants to know that they matter, that they've made a difference, that they matter to someone, and that they belong here. So, the messages of belonging are important. Here's another way that people in my research shows students feel a sense of belonging when they see themselves reflected. Sometimes it's in the signs on the wall. Sometimes it's in the sign from the instructor in the PowerPoint. Sometimes it's in the curriculum when they read things from authors who share their ethnic and cultural backgrounds, when they read pieces that reflect their worldview or their religious perspectives, whatever it might be. Those kind of things affirm their place in space and belonging. But they also feel a sense of belonging when they see themselves reflect. I was in Nashville, Tennessee, giving a talk at Vanderbilt University one time, a keynote, and at the end of it, a young woman, Latinx, first generation woman, said, "Hey, Dr. Strayhorn, you forgot the most important place I want to see myself reflected." She said, "It's good to see myself in the book, but every now and again, I want to see myself at the front of the room as the instructor." And this is what we have in the chat too, that another important value is having diverse faculty. Students want to see themselves and people like themselves who are doing cool things and making a difference and being successful. So as institutions, we have to do a much better job of propping up our diverse faculty. celebrating the successes of our women faculty, celebrating the successes and the contributions and the scholarship and the teaching and the awards of our scholars of color. For those who are, first in their family to be a professor, and those who come from a long line of academics, and those who are doing cutting edge research, as well as those who are doing sort of canonical, more traditional research and methodology. We have to celebrate it, not just because it's good for them. And I'm learning in the workplace belonging book, it boosts their workplace belonging. But when a student sees, wow, there's a faculty member, I was giving a keynote on the campus in Chicago, in Illinois, I don't know if it was Chicago, and met with a group of students who this particular student said, Dr. Strayhorn, I'm a business major, but when I'm done with my degree, what I want to do is go back home and I want to start a nonprofit. And she had a particular sort of local cause that she wanted to create a nonprofit for. And while she's telling me this, I'm fascinated by her. It was around environmental sustainability, but it wasn't just environmental. It was like environmental and business sustainability. She had this idea of a network of partners that could work with her nonprofit, churches and youth groups and all sorts of community agencies. And I'm just impressed with the breadth and the depth of her planning. And so I said to her, wow, that is amazing. She turned to me, she said, are you joking? I said, no, I'm not joking. Why? She said, well, every time I explain it to my faculty, they always say, I don't know why you would do that. Wouldn't you rather go run a Fortune 500 company? Wouldn't you rather go be the CEO of this big, gigantic conglomerate, this big place? And what it helped me realize is there's nothing wrong with being a CEO of a multinational global corporation. And for any student who wants to do that, I want that for you too. And I'm sure for any adult who's listening to the show or listen to it later, who's working with a student who has those aspirations, we should cultivate those aspirations, celebrate them, encourage them, right? But let's not minimize the student who has a dream to go back home, to do good work there, to build their own nonprofit, to start their own company, who, I've met lots of students. I know this one I often put on the show because I think it's just important to talk about, but I've met students who are in college and their dream is to go viral and to be a social media influencer. And listen, we shouldn't throw water on those dreams and aspirations. There are students probably that we know who will likely become quite successful and wealthy through the power of social media. It's probably like the athletic sports, NBA and the like, where all of those who aspire to do it won't do it to that level. But, I tell the story here where I've just now started going live on TikTok. I've done the other social media platforms, but I sort of studied TikTok for a while before I really got into it, and then definitely studied it for a while before I ever clicked live and started going there. And I say there's so much more I want to do on TikTok and I will do on TikTok, but I'll never forget my first night of going live. I was playing the piano and I played for, 20 some minutes. When you first go live, if you really want to open up and activate all of the features of live, TikTok requires you to go live for a long period of time. I think it's like at least 30 minutes. So I'm playing and I'm like, okay, I'm just playing. I'm looking at the screen. I'm like, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with this. But before you know it, people were coming into the room. And so I started talking to the people, saying hello, telling them to double tap the screen. I'm playing the piano the whole time. And then I just started singing. And so I started playing the piano and singing. And then while singing, I'm talking and I'm singing, I'm playing the piano. And long story short, at some point, I started talking to the people who were listening to me play. And I would say things like, I don't know what kind of day you had, if you had a long day or short day, but thanks for joining the live. And I just want to let you know that no matter what happened today, tomorrow is going to be a new canvas. Tomorrow's new. And you can start over. It's not too late. Before you know it, I'm just doing this mix of like inspirational kind of motivational speaking to them. They're double tapping the screen. They're typing in the chat. I really need to hear this while I'm also playing. Then I'll kick into a song going back and forth. I finally, I don't know. I might have gone like an hour and a half that first time for my live. And I when I clicked end, I will never forget, during the show, people were sending me gifts and stuff, and TikTok told me how much money I made by going live on my very first live. And it proved to me what so many, Gen Zers and youth today aspire for, and that is to use the power of social media to share their gifts, their talents, their ideas with the world in a way that will also generate revenue. And it is possible. I mean, I didn't go on TikTok to make any money that night, but to have made money and to have had a good time and to have been able to tap into lots of different of my own interests and gifts and talents is really exciting. Our colleague Rhonda says something I'm put on the screen. There's nothing wrong with individual dreams. We each have unique aspirations. It's so true that everybody is not going to be a doctor. Everybody's not going to be a lawyer. Everybody's not going to be a teacher. But, if you're going to dream, I'm in my brother's house. This is on his desk. I just saw it. It says dream big. So if you're going to dream, listen, dream big. Dream big. There's nothing wrong with dreaming big. But if you are working with students, we're about to wrap up, but if you're working with students as a teacher, mentor, parent, auntie, uncle, cousin, peer, near peer, whatever, here's the thing. Dream big. I'm all for it. But to paraphrase Henry David Thoreau's book, I think it's Henry David Thoreau, or Ralph Waldo Emerson. Either way, there's one of them said something to the effect of, don't build sandcastles. It's okay to build sandcastles in the air. That's what they're supposed to be. Build your castles in the air. Dream big. Dream huge. But whoever said this, I'll get the quote for you, make sure I have it for the next show. They said, put the foundation, then go back and put the foundation under them. So, I tell young people, I met a young man in Milwaukee. I was just there recently giving a talk at Marquette, and my sister went with me. Shout out to my sister, Kim. And I remember meeting a young man who was like, oh man, I got these big ideas. My ideas are so big. I'm going to blow up. Doc, you got to take a picture with me because when I blow up, I'm going to be big. And I was like, that's great. I love it. Okay. What are your ideas? Oh man, they're big. I said, I get that. They're really big. So what are they? Man, they're so big. I can't even put them into words. And I stopped him. I said, now the problem with that is, that's not going to be useful to anyone. You're going to have to be able to put your ideas into words. You're going to have to be able to communicate them. If you can't put them into words, put them into a picture, because someone can fund your big idea. They can fund your big dream, but you're going to have to be able to articulate it to them. You're going to have to be able to draw it for them. As a man of faith, as a Christian, the Bible says, write the vision, make it plain. You can have the vision. That's great. But then you got to be able to write it. You got to be able to talk it out, let people see it, because there are investors, some financial, some spiritual, some psychological, who will invest in your ideas, but only to the extent that they can see them. And so I often push young people to not get caught up with the words of, oh my goodness, I got these big old dreams. I'm going to blow up. That's great. But blow up doing what? And thank you, Jacob, for finding it. That's the one I want. If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them. It was Henry David Thoreau. Thank you, Miss Pleasance, my 11th grade English teacher. All right. That wraps up our show for the day. It's been great to talk with you all. Look forward to the next week's show. I'm going to get ready to close this out. I know I should have started the show but you start with the first letter of your last name. How are you feeling? I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling super. Looking forward to the next show. Until then, listen, don't be afraid to do something. If you're going to do something good. And y'all know what we call it here. We call it do good work.
Welcome to Do Good Work Podcast, hosted by Terrell Strayhorn and Jaquan Johnson. We specialize in taking a deep dive into issues that truly matter. Each episode unpacks the challenges and opportunities facing today's leaders, from classrooms to boardrooms, offering insights that inspire real change. By redefining success, we're changing lives, empowering people everywhere to create environments where everyone feels a sense of belonging, whether at home, work, or school. So hey, sit back, relax, Grab your favorite beverage and join us as we explore the issues shaping our futures, one meaningful conversation at a time. Let's go!